I'm Marie-Louise Kerr. I am the exhibition curator at the Museum of History of Science. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to all of you this afternoon. I think I'm probably one of the newest members of staff at the University Museums. I started at the end of March, so I feel like I'm very, very new. Lots of faces that I haven't yet met, lots of names I haven't yet come across, but I am hoping that we'll get a chance to sort of meet more. I think this is a great opportunity. And I loved the photos Andrew used in his last presentation. So I feel my presentation is going to be sadly lacking in men in overcoats with moustaches. So I apologise in advance. So my talk today is on the Back from the Dead exhibition that we have opening in November. It is going to be an exhibition on the history of penicillin, but also generally antibiotics in the 1940s and up to modern day. I'm going to be looking at co-curation across the Oxford University departments. The whole part of our exhibition is the wonder of being able to use all the fantastic research facilities we have at the university in the museum itself. So it's hopefully a beneficial display for both us at the museum, showing off our collection, and the other departments getting to share what they research. I'm going to particularly focus in on the Oxford Martin School, who we're working in partnership with and in co-curation with, and the fact that they're going to be studying the social dimensions of antibiotics. So it's not just all the medical, chemical side of things, it's actually how it impacts people, how it impacts us as patients. So, first slide, you talk about penicillin. Surely it's all about this man here, Alexander Fleming. I'm afraid our exhibition is saying no. I'm afraid it's really not. We are choosing to celebrate penicillin this year because 2016 is the 75th anniversary of the first human trials of penicillin back in 1941. And this man here did his work in 1928. Obviously, Alexander Fleming did have, I can't completely take away all of his adulation, he did notice the first time the antibiotic facilities, the properties of this wonderful mould he found in his lab. But actually, he wasn't actually able to effectively isolate or work with penicillin. He wasn't a chemist, and he wasn't able to effectively test it on animals or on humans. So penicillin, having been observed and written up, was then kind of left on the shelves for nearly 13 years. Nothing further was done with it. And it was actually only when these men stepped in that actually penicillin became something we could use, became something that actually added 20 years onto all of our lives. People live 20 years longer today because of antibiotics, because of vaccinations. And it is because of these men, and not just men, there were women involved as well, but I've just picked the key players. And we're really, well, I feel like I'm really proud to be part of the Museum of History of Science, doing what museums do best, challenging perceived historical narratives. Actually, people say, this is how it is, and museums get to come in and say, well, actually, no, it's not that simplistic. And actually telling the stories, telling the facts, sharing the objects that told that history, that tell that story. And it's this Oxford team that did the work developing penicillin, and they carried out the first clinical trials 75 years ago. So this man here is Florey. He was an Australian. He became the Professor of Pathology at the Dunn School here in Oxford. He created a team around him that included Ernest Chain, a German Jewish refugee, and Norman Heatley, who became kind of the lab assistant, the lab technician. Chain came across Alexander's papers talking about the antibiotic properties of penicillin, and Chain and Florey decided this was something quite exciting, something to look into in more detail. They went on to share the Nobel Prize with Alexander Fleming in 1945 because of penicillin. So again, Fleming wasn't the only one, and not the only one recognised. And Heatley hasn't been recognised as such, but actually without Heatley, they wouldn't have been able to create the penicillin to do the tests. He was the ingenious person who came up with all the apparatus. It was Heatley in wartime Oxford, very much make, do and mend, not just grow your own food, grow your own laboratory equipment. Heatley created equipment from biscuit tins, from sheep dip tins, and these are all bed pans, you can see here. He used anything and everything he could lay his hands on to actually produce this, what was referred to as mould juice. That really, lovely stuff. Next time you're having your penicillin tablets, just think of that mould juice. He created this to actually make the penicillin, so they could actually do any tests on. If you're going to test something, you have to have something to test. And actually what's lovely about this photo here is we have these anonymous lab girls. So again, this history, this unknown history, wasn't just Alexander Fleming. There are women working on penicillin who are not recognised nowadays, who helped to produce the essential mould juice that was then worked on. Heatley was able to produce enough penicillin in 1941 that we carried out those first human trials. But basically, I'll have to double check my facts, but it's meant to be that one shot of penicillin today, one injection of penicillin, contains more than all the penicillin they tested on 5 people over the whole of 1941. So they were really using minuscule amounts, and actually realised for it to work, they were going to have to mass produce penicillin. So Florey and Heatley took a very dangerous flight across the Atlantic in 1941 to go to Australia, knowing that, again, wartime Britain couldn't produce penicillin. So they went to America and managed to persuade a laboratory in Illinois to actually mass produce, or to produce on a large scale, penicillin. The other person we're going to be including in our exhibition, who's overlooked now, is Dorothy Crowfoot-Hodgkin. She was a British biochemist who worked in protein crystallography. She used X-ray crystallography to work out the 3D structures of biomolecules. I'm not a scientist. I've used all those words. I can't necessarily tell you what those words mean. But yes, she was a very, very clever lady. She was given the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1964. She is still the only British woman to have a Nobel Prize. And again, people don't know of her. I think people who are crystallographers know her history, but her history has been kind of neglected, all to Fleming being the god of penicillin. So it's great to uncover her story. And we have some of her correspondents in the exhibition that are going to talk about the fact she was working on this project with an 8-week-old baby. That's remarkable, to be a full-time mum and a full-time scientist, and to make these amazing discoveries that would impact how we were able to create penicillin. Oh, I have to speed up. So these are just some tastes of what we're going to have in the exhibition about penicillin bringing people back from the dead, some of the propaganda, and again, some of the unknown stories, the women who made it in the factories, some of the first patients who received penicillin and its impact. But yes, the whole point, in my last minute, was about a partnership. So we are going to be working with the Oxford Martin School, who work on tackling the most pressing global challenges. And antibiotic resistance today is seen as the major problem to be tackled globally. And what we're going to be doing is we're working with some of the psychologists from the Oxford Martin School. Nowadays, as a patient, you're not just a passive consumer of medicine. People are seen as taking an active role in what medicine they take, how they're treated by doctors. And we're going to be giving people the opportunity as visitors at the museum to contribute towards university research. Some of the psychologists from the OMS are going to be having surveys, having a little booth, to ask people about their ethics, their attitudes towards antibiotics, and even things like risk perception, how you take antibiotics. Do you take it to make you feel better? Do you take it if you know you're going to risk your child in 10 years' time because of possibility of resistance? And I think this is going to be a fantastic opportunity for us as a museum to be that platform, rather than it all happening away in a department at the university, be part of this public building and actually catch these wonderful people passing through who are interested in antibiotics and actually grill them on what they think about how people should take antibiotics and what we do about resistance and what we do about taking antibiotics properly. But I think hopefully that's me fitted in pretty much in my time slot. I'm very impressed. Well, I'm impressed with myself. Thank you very much.